indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to our regular scheduled meeting of August 1st. Please note the council's in full attendance except for Mr. Halapaska. He's absent. I think we might have people here that want to speak to us tonight, which is wonderful. So let me explain how we'll do this. The first item on our agenda is items from council, where council brings up anything they need to, followed by citizens' communication. But what I thought I would do, if council has no objection, is after, or part of items of council, we could go over the mowing issue, which I know of great concern to everyone. And staff has some information to share with us. I know we may have some remarks. That way everybody can have more informed comments. And then we'll open citizens' communication so everybody can come up and talk. So, council, is that okay with you guys? Okay. Also, Ms. Garrett, you want to mention the Ben Wilson real quick?
Yes, at the last meeting, Dr. Morgan presented the Ben Wilson UHV corridor concept, and we talked about bringing it back on the 1st. Mr. Halapaska asked that we bring it back at another date, and I mentioned August 15th, but Dr. Morgan that night quickly said he couldn't be here. So I've talked to Dr. Morgan, and August the 29th is the meeting that he can be here. So we'll just plan on talking about the Ben Wilson corridor that night, and hopefully get to some resolution so they can continue their planning process. But August the 29th.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. And we do need to be ready just to move on and make that decision that night. So I encourage you to try to get any questions answered ahead of time if you need to. We do have one person on the agenda that was requested to be on. I don't know if he's here. Michael, is it Pentecost? Is that how are you here, sir? Okay. We'll give us a few minutes and then we'll get you on up here. Thank you. Okay, so we are in items from council. I would like to start the discussion on the mowing, but before I do that, do y'all have any other issues you want to bring up? Okay, of course, you can bring them up at any point in time. With respect to the mowing of right-of-way issues, of course, there's been a lot of commentary, social media, and I think it's been great, very helpful. You know, the city maintains a lot of, we call them right-of-ways and/or easements. An easement, for example, may be, we may have an easement to an area, but that doesn't mean we own that property. And I don't want to get too deep into legal definitions and all that here. Of course, as I've mentioned to a lot of people, we talked about right-of-ways, a lot of good conversations where those are necessary to allow companies to bring different services, whether it be electricity or phone or gas or cable, all those different services. So in a sense, you know, the right-of-ways, they're beneficial to everyone, and the word beneficial is important because the resident typically has beneficial use of that right-of-way, even though technically they may not own it. Like in my backyard, I have one that's a really nice flower bed. I take care of the flower bed, but I do know that if the gas company ever comes through there and needs to get in, I'm going to lose that flower bed, and I can't ask the gas company to put it back for me. So I'm reminded of an issue years back, a pretty large right-of-way. It was an alley. And a gentleman, over time, had some gravel put in and treated it as an extra driveway. And unfortunately, guess what? We had to go in, it held a large water main. We went in and took the gravel out and replaced the water main. And he didn't understand how we couldn't go back and put it back the way it was because, well, taxpayers we can't pay for that driveway that you got. So it's a mixed-use type situation. There's some benefit we derive from these right-of-ways. And I will make it very clear, and I did not like, I thought the Advocate was misleading with their headline. We have not changed, we're not considering changing that. I believe it was the city ways requiring residents to mow public property. That's already the law. I would have much preferred to see something where resident asks council or city to reconsider or to review right-of-way policy. I think that would have been more appropriate because it led to a lot of confusion out there. So I did not appreciate that, and I've expressed that. I thought it was misleading, but we can move on from that. So tonight, I know Mr. Kaminsky has reviewed it. You know, also I want to make very clear the process we're going through. The first I had heard of this issue was at the last council meeting. And I think it was Ms. Henry, I think she's here, very appropriately came to council and brought it up. We then requested it to be reviewed by staff, which you have done, Mr. Kaminsky, so you can report to us. So if any action or ordinance change is required, we then need to post that on the next meeting agenda to be voted on. Unfortunately, government does run slow, but there's a reason, to allow everyone time to have comments and see what we're doing. So, council, did y'all have anything else before Mr. Kaminsky reports?
I do. I want to stand up for Mr. Kaminsky. The article that was in the paper insinuated that Mr. Kaminsky had quoted to the advocate that the residents needed to pick up slack. I've worked with Mr. Kaminsky for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years now. That's not a statement that I would believe he would make, and in visiting with everybody, I know he did not make that. And this is kind of the second time that the advocate has kind of gone out there and rung the bell and inferred that, something happened that didn't happen or incorrectly reported anything, and they're never quick to make an apology or make a correction or a clarification. So I respectfully request that the advocate stand up during citizens' communication and clarify the reporting on that. And give something back to Mr. Kaminsky where everybody was thinking that he made some comment that wasn't actually made. And so I would really like to see the advocate stand up during citizens' communication and really just clarify that reporting statement.
Okay. Any council, any? If not, okay. Mr. Kaminsky, you want to show us what you have?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I want to start this discussion with talking about the section of City Code that deals with mowing of weeds and high grass. We find that that provision in Chapter 10 of the Code, Article 2, Division 2, Section 1041 of City Code says that it's unlawful for an owner of a lot, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, to permit weeds or grass to grow to a height greater than 12 inches. You have to pay close attention to one word in that section, and that's the term lot. For purposes of this section of the City Code, the term lot is defined in Section 1040 of the code, and that is land within the property lines and all areas of public right-of-way adjacent to and extending beyond the property line of said lot, to the curb line of adjacent streets where a curb line has been established, or to the edge of pavement. So what does that look like? This first graphic shows a couple of lots, typical lots that would be in the interior of a subdivision. One interior lot on the right and one corner lot on the left. The red shading is the private property, and the blue shading is the adjacent right-of-way. This is where how probably 90% of the residential lots are in the city of Victoria. They're interior to the subdivision. If you're in an interior lot like the lot on the right there, you have your lot plus about somewhere between 9 and 10 feet. Typically, it varies, but it could be 10 to 12 sometimes, of right-of-way that's essentially part of your front yard. I've never run across anybody to question the idea that they should be mowing the area between the curb and the front property line. Some people may not even realize it's not their property. Same on the corner lot, except you have that right-of-way on 2 streets. And it's, again, in the internal portions of most subdivisions that have curb and gutter, it's going to be about 9 to 10 feet wide. It's going to typically have a sidewalk in it, so you're left with 4 or 5 feet of grass of city property that you're typically mowing. The next type of lot is what I'm calling a typical reversed frontage lot. Reverse frontage meaning that the house or the lot backs up to a thoroughfare, but it receives its access off of a local street that's internal to the subdivision. So in this example, again, the red shading is the private property. The small blue strip in the front is the street that they're facing, where their driveway and sidewalk are. And in this case, it backs up to a thoroughfare that's been fully developed, meaning it's 4 lanes wide. And according to the section of code we just looked at, the owner is responsible for mowing the right-of-way in the front and the back. In this situation, that right-of-way in the back could range from typically 10 to 15 feet. There are other possibilities, and we'll cover those here shortly. This is what I would call an atypical reverse frontage lot. In this picture, the front of the house is toward the top of the picture. Again, they have access from a local street. This lot happens to back up to Ball Airport Road, a section of Ball Airport Road that has, a typical full thoroughfare right-of-way is between 80 and 100 feet. For reasons that I have not been able to determine, this small section of Ball Airport Road actually has 120 feet of right-of-way. We only have a 2-lane street with a center turn lane. So the street obviously has not been fully developed as a thoroughfare. That's going to leave a lot of extra right-of-way outside of the curb and gutter or outside of the edge of the street. In these cases, that amount of right-of-way can be anywhere from 25 to 45 feet, and in a few cases, even slightly wider than that, between the fence or the back property line and the street. The prime examples of this type of situation are Ball Airport Road, Guy Grant Road, Millette Drive, and Ben Jordan Street, portions of Ben Jordan Street. This is what I'm calling an atypical corner lot. Again, you have a full thoroughfare right-of-way. In this case, it's 80 feet wide. It's Guy Grant Road. We only have a 2-lane street without a center turn lane, so it's particularly narrow. And in this case, the street happens to not be centered within that 80-foot right-of-way. There's more right-of-way on the southwest side of Guy Grant than there is on the other side, resulting in some areas, 40 feet or more of grass between the edge of the street and the property line. And it varies from one end of Guy Grant to the other as to how much right-of-way there is on either side, and I'll show you that in a future slide.
Now, John, that's the property that was brought up at the last.
That is
council
one of
meeting.
the properties that was mentioned to you 2 weeks ago at your last meeting.
And we used to actually mow some of that. I'm gonna go ahead. I
Yes, sir.
have talked with people about
Let's
this.
talk about the background of
And
that.
it got, are you gonna do that? You want me to?
I am.
Okay, I'll let you go.
And if I
Sorry.
leave something out, please feel free to interrupt.
Absolutely, sorry.
So let's go back and talk about kind of how we got here. The requirement for property owners to maintain and mow the rights of way adjacent to their private properties has been in place for over 25 years. I didn't go back much further than that. I can tell you that in 1991, that those terms within that definition did include the right of way up to the edge of the street. I didn't go past 91, but however, over several decades, the Parks Department had been tasked with mowing various areas of right-of-way that were not being maintained by the adjacent owners. And the amount of that right-of-way that Parks was responsible for continued to expand through the 90s and early 2000s, to the point that resources that were directed toward right-of-way mowing were impacting the department's ability to adequately achieve their core purpose, which is parkland maintenance, not street right-of-way maintenance. In recent years, we've been removing several right-of-way corridors from the park's mowing rotation and notifying the property owners of their responsibility to maintain right-of-way adjacent to their properties. Some are being maintained and some are not.
John, this is where I wanted to, and in some of those situations, you just said we should not have been mowing, and we had some, I guess you could say, good-intentioned employees that meant well, but that kind of thing is unsustainable over long term. And of course, that supervisor is no longer employed by the city, and that's what was corrected, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it got a little silly because they're out there and they have specific duties, and while they wanted to just keep going, we have to treat everyone fair.
What
So some
happens-
places got mowed, some didn't. Got sloppy. That's a true statement?
Yes, sir, and what happens is, when you take on all that extra space to maintain, you can't keep up with a regular rotation for your right-of-way mowing or your park mowing. I mean, we were behind all the time in both areas, so it's a struggle. Again, it's been inconsistent. Some of those areas where we have notified owners that they would be required to mow are mowing it. Others are not. Some are spotty. You have 5 or 6 in a row that are being mowed, and then one that's not being mowed, and then one that's mowed, and it's just, it's very inconsistent and not attractive. Of course, thoroughfares, in the second 2 examples that I gave you with the wider areas of unimproved right-of-way, typically over 25 feet on each side, are going to be more problematic than others. If your typical thoroughfare right-of-way is 80 to 90 feet and occasionally wider, obviously the amount of grass that's going to be necessary to mow depends on how wide the street is, and I want to give you kind of an idea of how these break out. If you have a 5-lane street, 4-lane with a center turn lane, typically you'll have 10 to 12 feet of right-of-way outside the curb. If there are sidewalks, you'll end up with a 6 to 8 foot strip of grass to mow. If you have a 4-lane street without a center turn lane, it's about 15 to 20 feet of right-of-way outside the curb. Again, if there are sidewalks, it's 10 to 15 feet of mowing. Where you get to more difficult situations is when you have a 2-lane street with a center turn lane, or in some cases we have 2-lane streets with shoulders. You have 25 to 30 feet from the outside of the street to the property line, and if you don't have a turn lane or shoulders, you're looking at 35 to 40 feet, and in some cases more, depending on the right-of-way width. And again, all these dimensions assume that the street is centered within the right-of-way, which I've already told you is not always the case. Some examples. This is a section of Ball Airport Road where I believe the width of right-of-way outside of the edge of the street is somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 feet. It varies. And again, this is a section where we have 2 traffic lanes and a fairly wide center turn lane, but we have an extra wide right-of-way. You can see in the picture on the left that it varies. This is where we just added or built the extension of Ball Airport Road out near Fire Station number 6, and you can see the transition in that picture. In the new section, we actually built the 2 lanes on one side of the right-of-way. So you have a typical right-of-way width on one side and an extra wide amount of right-of-way on the other side, because when it's time to add 2 lanes to make this ultimately a 4-lane boulevard design street, we don't have to tear up the existing 2 lanes. We go in and build the other side. So this is, again, there are unusual circumstances. A couple of pictures along Guy Grant. This is the section there near the townhomes. This right-of-way that you're looking at is somewhere a little over 40 feet in width from the edge of the street to the property line. And these are a couple of other sections further down Guy Grant toward Mockingbird, where again the maintenance is spotty. So what are the alternatives? Requiring adjacent owners to maintain these wider right-of-way areas using the code enforcement process is not working. It's inefficient. By nature, the code enforcement process is slow. It provides due process for folks that are receiving notices to abate nuisances, and it does not happen overnight. And you're dealing with property owners on an individual basis. So if you have 7 lots in a row that need to mow the right-of-way behind their house, you're sending out 7 letters, you're dealing with 7 code enforcement cases. You may get compliance immediately out of 1 or 2 of them. Now you have 3 or 4 lots that are not mowed. Maybe a couple weeks later, you get compliance from another one. Eventually, you have to contract it out because somebody's refusing to mow. That's going to take another couple of weeks. So it's just not an effective process for maintaining right-of-way. It does its job when it comes to abating nuisances within neighborhoods and other areas of town, but it's not a good tool for what we're trying to do with it, just to be honest.
John, are you talking about the right-of-ways, the examples that are a bit too wide and a lot to expect? Or are you talking about all right-of-ways?
We have it in other areas, but where we have the most difficulty is these wider.
Okay.
It makes sense. I mean,
Where
it's
they're,
logical.
obviously, it's a bit unfair to
Sure.
ask them. And
I mean,
I would
that's the
imagine
perception.
this also aggravates residents quite a bit to get a letter
Absolutely.
from us. It would
Absolutely.
aggravate me, so, okay.
Yes, sir. Now, we can keep doing it, but again, you're going to get the same inconsistent results. We believe the only effective way to ensure that these thoroughfare corridors are maintained in a consistent and attractive manner, assuming that's your goal, is for the city to provide the service. The Parks Department does not have adequate resources to maintain these areas, and we believe their efforts should be focused on maintaining parks. So it is our recommendation that the mowing of the unusually wide right-of-way corridors be contracted out. The next series of slides are the areas that we have identified as having rights-of-way on one or both sides of a thoroughfare that are greater than 25 feet. The first one is Ball Airport Road, starting at Glasgow and extending out to the northeast, out to Northside Road at near Tuscany subdivision. The next corridor is Ben Jordan Street, starting at the north end at Loop 463 and working our way back into town from the Loop to John Stockbauer next to Bell Tower, from Stockbauer to Lone Tree Creek along those several subdivisions on the southeast side. And then the final stretch that reaches all the way down near Sam Houston, not quite to Sam Houston. Of course, there's a 4-lane section or a 5-lane section there as you get close to the intersection with Sam Houston. Guy Grant Road, this one varies a lot. If you started at Versailles and went north, the area where we have that large deep ditch, that's currently included within our drainage right-of-way mowing contract. The reason being that it needs a special piece of equipment to be mowed. It needs the boom mower with the articulating arm because of how steep it is and how deep the ditch is. So that one's maintained by our contractor that does other drainage outfalls. The remainder of it is pretty flat. There are some areas that are very flat within this section, and there are some that have a fairly shallow ditch. But again, the areas that are highlighted in yellow are areas that are currently not part of another mowing contract and that Parks formerly mowed up until recently. And we have a small section of Millette Drive where the Vista Cove subdivision backs up to Millette. It's probably the widest example of all of these in terms of the amount of right-of-way from the edge of street to the back property line. The estimated cost of an annual contract to maintain these areas is somewhere between $45,000 and $60,000. It's a very rough estimate. I just got some of the numbers late this afternoon, and they're based on quotes from one contractor. These are not actual bid prices. The actual areas that need to be included in the contracting and the frequency of how many times they would be mowed in a year needs to be refined. It also may be possible to add some of these areas to existing mowing contracts. We have, 4 or 5 different mowing contracts. So I think we'll need to refine the number. I think we can get it to the lower end of this estimate, but we need more time, and we need to put a pencil to it and get a little more specific. And one last thing, there are some other areas. We have some right-of-way corridors that are currently still being mowed by Parks or are being contracted out that will continue as they are. And the examples of this are, we have some areas where roadside ditches exceed a slope that can be safely mowed with residential lawn equipment. These are within the areas that over the years Parks has taken on, and as we've begun to removed that park maintenance. We kept these areas that had the steep ditches because it was an exception that we made because it's just not reasonable to expect a person with residential lawn equipment to mow them. So there are a few of those. There are some other more rare situations or circumstances that are out there. We have some places where there's a fairly wide stretch of right-of-way between streets or highways and railroad right-of-way. The railroad, it's hard to get the railroad to mow their own right-of-way. They're not going to mow our right-of-way, and nobody else is going to mow our right-of-way in those locations. And some of them are very wide, so we will continue to maintain those areas. We've got a couple of rare situations where we have a wide right-of-way between a street and a drainage outfall. A drainage outfall is located in a separate right-of-way outside of the street right-of-way. The property owners that are on the other side of that drainage outfall don't touch the street right-of-way. They're not adjacent. So again, there's nobody else that's going to mow that area. The city's going to have to continue to do it. And we have a few areas, these are typically all along state highways on the edge of the city limits, where the city limit line follows the right-of-way line. And the highway is in the city limits, but the private property is not. The city code doesn't apply to people that don't live in the city limits. And so those property owners are not responsible for mowing the right-of-way in front of their properties. There are very few of those, but we do have some that we will continue to mow. Again, because there's nobody else to take on that responsibility.
And John, we do contact the railroad about mowing their
Oh,
right
we
of
do,
way.
but
It's just
drive by one today and it's
that-
not mowed.
But we do, yeah.
They have gotten better about spraying herbicide a little more frequently than they used to, but we still have a lot of issues with the maintenance of railroad right-of-ways. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
But I think the point, though, in addition to the questions, is if y'all wish for us to pick that back up, you kind of have that ballpark number. So we will be glad to do that. When we talk a little later about that tax rate increase, and where I asked for that penny, and some of that penny would go towards street maintenance and parks, that since this would be a recurring cost, I would suggest that some of that money be allocated to this mowing. We'll work through the rest of the year to try to take care of what we need to take care of, so.
John, your range of 45 to 60, of course, we want you to bring it back a lot less. I know you're going to work real hard on that.
I think I can.
That's 26 times every 2 weeks?
The high end of that estimate is based on the entire length of all those corridors that I showed you 26 times a year. And we just need to look at, is that necessary? Is it overkill?
Yeah.
And, are there areas where we can either tweak the areas that are mowed or adjust the number of times that it needs to be mowed?
Yeah, yeah.
The problem is it's seasonal and it's different from year to year. Right? In a wet year, you're going to probably want that. In a dry year, you're probably not going to need it.
And it will be a not to
I'm not going to predict the
exceed.
weather.
I'm sorry, John, it'll be a not to exceed contract.
It will, and it's
if it
only
doesn't-
mowed when it's necessary. So you have a not to exceed number based on a maximum frequency, whether it's 20 or 26 times. In our other mowing contracts, it varies depending on what kind of mowing it is and where it's located, but that's a not to exceed number. It's not mowed unless the contractor is contacted and told, we need to hit these areas. So you may not use all 26 times.
How soon do you think that we're going to be starting this process?
Well, if you give us a consensus tonight, we'll go ahead and start working on figuring out what we need to do to get it mowed. I may need to do a budget amendment, but we can start working on that.
Go
so.
look for contractor or bids or whatever you need to do, or add it to existing.
Yeah, add it to existing, so, but we
Okay.
can get started on it quickly and bring back, whatever I need to bring back. Or if I need to sign something and let y'all ratify it, we can do that too to keep it moving.
Because if it's added to existing, you may be able to approve that under a certain amount.
Depends.
You could
yeah,
get, okay.
Depends. We'll just we'll work on it. If that's what, if you like the idea of us picking up the mowings on this, we'll work on it quickly.
I like the idea.
I like the idea, but I have a question on how to make sure the ordinance reflects this.
Well-
Because if you go by letter of the law, they're still responsible. And then I don't want 6 years from now, a different council up here and saying, no, we're cutting that out. And we're back in the same boat we're in right now.
And we can look at that language, what language change we need to bring back to you. That's not a problem. So it's just a matter of a consensus. Do y'all want us to move in this direction? And we'll make sure we're taking care of every area that needs to be taken care of.
And you looked over the entire city, and these are the only ones that fall in that category? I mean, there's nothing on, I don't know, trying to think anywhere else on Ben Wilson or?
If there are others, they're in areas that are not developed. They're in areas that are mostly vacant, mostly farmland, pasture land. So I'm not gonna say 100% there's not another one of these out there. There may be that, and we just haven't seen it. There's not another one out there that we're having ongoing issues with code enforcement, because of the width of the right-of-way. I can say that, but never gonna say never on that. There's probably an exception out there that I haven't found. And if
That's-
there is,
That's part of what
we'll
makes
address
this
it.
so difficult. I mean, if a guy has a couple of hundred acres he's farming that happens to be half of it in the city limits, he's gonna run a shredder up and down there every once in a while and take care of it. It's just different from a visual perspective. But if you drive down Guy Grant up around HEB and you see this guy goes and weed eats, this guy doesn't, this guy does, or if you go down John Stockbriar, and you can't force people to have the same standard of how things look.
Right.
We all know that. So it is a difficult situation to manage. I do feel that these situations, as Ms. Henry brought up in hers, is unfair to ask her to do that much. I'm comfortable asking staff to go ahead and these specific areas, go out and do that.
I just want to take what Councilman Balknight said a step further, though, because as I was listening to this, I found myself thinking about some of those rights-of-way that are wide right now. But if we put that into the ordinance, that's what we're going to maintain, then when we come back and widen those roads, I don't want us to have put in stone, we're going to maintain this corridor, because I think it's more based on the width than.
So when it goes from atypical to typical, we stop.
And we discussed that today a little bit about how we need to, and appreciate that, and we'll keep that in mind as we're working on that language. And we will end up probably with another atypical when we build out Placido Benavides. It's gonna be an extra
will.
right away, so we'll be back talking about doing it.
We will.
I was kind of thinking in the ordinance that it'd be a maximum width that
We
would
would-
be defined as typical or something.
And I had to grin, I had the exact same two questions right before this meeting. So those are, it would be nice someday if, for example, if we codify these by specific corridors in the ordinance, it'd be great to see Millette Drive get expanded out someday. Somebody somewhere's gonna have to flag it to go back and remove it, and, all good stuff, good points, so.
John, excellent presentation, very thorough. I certainly understand Ms. Henry's frustration and our neighbor who spoke last meeting's frustration in regards to this, and hopefully we can come to a consensus up here and move forward and help.
I think we've got it, and I was telling the mayor today, that's a little bit different in local government, state and federal. We're pretty responsive when we get questions. Sometimes we have to say, no, we can't do that, but where we can, we try, and that's exactly what's going on today. So, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. It's a difficult subject. Everybody, it's hard to, there's so many different situations as we've all seen. So, anyway, okay, so I want to thank everybody for letting us do that first. Is there any other items from council before we open up citizens' communication? Did I miss anything? Okay. Okay, let's just move straight into citizens' communication. We do have one person that asked to come before us. You want to come, Mr. Pentecost, you want to go first? And then your issue's different, I understand, and then we'll. And just real quick, your name and address for the record, and then try to keep your comments to at least 5 minutes out of respect for everyone else.
Absolutely. My name is Michael Pentecost. I live at 6234 US Highway 59 South in Victoria, Texas. I got here on April 17th, and I love everything except for the humidity. I'm not used to that as much, but I'm getting used to it. But here recently, you guys had a storm in town that knocked a tree down on an elderly lady's property, knocked her power out, and she was on limited income, that sort of thing. So I happened to read in the Victoria Advocate about the situation, and on the way home from work, I stopped by just to see if there's anything that could be done. Well, through some generous neighbors and neighbors that became good neighbors after that, got the tree taken care of in a matter of probably about an hour and a half. Everyone pulled together and did a great job. It's kind of a neighborhood help that I like to see. I wish everyone was that way. And then I called a friend and asked him if he knew of an electrician. He called me back. Electrician called me the next day, said, I'll take care of it. So he ended up repairing the electric and through actually brought the house up to code through installing a new box and so forth. So it's in a good way. Doesn't have a fire hazard like she did before, if that makes sense. But all in all, the total bill for everything is going to cost about $140 or something like that. 80 of that is the city permit fee or the inspection, which I understand is necessary, that sort of thing. My suggestion would be to, in situations like this, or you may even broaden it to cover the elderly and people that can't pay, is that maybe a permit, the fees in this time, in this sort of situation could be waived. Or if you're working with a group, say like Habitat for Humanity, that or another group that's going to be doing the work at no cost, that could be waived as well. I really am not an advocate of a lot of government subsidy on things, but I think it's good to show that we care about our elderly and those that are really in need in a situation like this. So it's in your hands. I'm glad. Like I said, I'm glad to be here. I've heard nothing but good things about the council coming from the Dallas area. You don't throw chairs and meet outside in the parking lot in the back, that sort of thing. So, not that I'm aware of. So you may hadn't made the advocate yet. So that's all I really have. So.
Well, let me just say thank you very much for obviously doing what you did for that person. That speaks volumes of you. And I think you'll find that Victoria is a very charitable, kind place. There are a lot of people that will chip in to help each other. So, but to you personally, thank you very much for what you did.
Sure. Thank you. Again, I just it was really good to meet new people. So I'm new here, but we had neighbors that had lived across the street from each other or down the street. They didn't know each other. Now they know each other. And when we get done, we're going to help paint our house and also have our neighborhood block parties, which I'll have to invite you guys.
Do you know Habitat for Humanity? Have you been involved with them before? 'Cause
I have not.
okay, you might have half a dozen or so charitable organizations come find you now. You realize that? So
I have a
after,
chainsaw and 7 goats.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you. Okay, citizens' communication is still open for anyone who would like to come up. Just, again, name, address for the record, and try to limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we appreciate it.
My name's Linda Henry, 102 Versailles, and you guys know me all right. We've communicated on social media and whatnot. And though I do like what I've heard here tonight, I do want to, nothing's done until it's done. So I want to really reiterate to the city council to please follow through. I've talked to so many people in the last 2 weeks. I've literally walked the streets and talked, and you would not believe the stories I've heard. Now, Mr. Mayor, you said that, this is like the first you've been hearing about it. But, for a long, long time, back as far as 2010, and most recently here since June, all these letters have gone out. People have told me that they have, whenever they call the city offices, they complain, but it's no good to do that because they can't do anything, they just work there. So somebody in these city offices aren't relaying the messages. So there could perhaps be some kind of a communication gap going on between the city offices that the people actually go into and what comes to y'all. So I want you to be, I don't know, see how you can fix that communication to those that actually hear from the public, because this is something that, what I'm hearing, boy, there's been a lot of people yelling at city workers, but it's somehow not getting to y'all. I do want to clear up one thing, or I'll give you my opinion here, but as for an owner, everything in the ordinance, it refers to the owner. Now, these people that live along these wide right-of-ways, they are not the owner. Now, I've had people tell me that, and because they have been told by the city they have to maintain these, and when they do, I can think of one gentleman that when the utilities company was driving behind his property, because that's what utility companies do to get to what they've got to go to, and it had rained, and he asked the utility company not to drive on the grass because he maintains it, and of course it puts ruts in there. And the utility guy was real quick to tell him it wasn't his property, it's the easement. So stuff like that, this is what makes people say, forget you then, because they're not the owner. They don't have any respect, they have no rights to it, they have no control over it. And so your own definition in the ordinances, it defines, in that section 1040, it defines owner as, oh my goodness, you guys messed me up with my speech because you you changed everything now that
Sorry about that.
now that you're being cooperative, you know. So now I'm going to have to look here. Yeah, well, I've got the words down somewhere
okay.
here. Oh, okay. It defines owner as any person owning any interest in a lot, or any person leasing, occupying, or having supervision or control of a lot. See, by that very definition in y'all's ordinance, none of the people that have gotten these letters that say you must mow are the owner. But I would suggest, if you want help mowing, maybe you should contact the gas, electric, AT&T, all these people that run their lines underground or have access to this easement because it's their job. You might want to partner with them and say, hey, help us mow this stuff. I mean, that's a thought, and that would save the city a little bit of money. Of course, the city of Victoria is going to be responsible for the sewer, the water, and the drainage, of course, but you might get some partnerships with some of the utility companies that actually access these for their job. So that's about all I have right now. If you would indulge me just a second, I have a letter here from Daniel Lopez. His wife is here. May I turn around here and ask? Do you want me to still read his letter, considering it? Okay. May I have Daniel Lopez's time?
Council, do you have a problem with that?
No problem.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. To the Victoria City Council, my name is Daniel J. Lopez. I am a Victoria County taxpayer, and I reside at 515 Bramblebush Lane. I do care about how my home and how my property around my home appears. In an article published by the Victoria Advocate in September 12, 2010, concerning the same issue, it was titled Mowing Quandary. The reason for this article being written by the Victoria Advocate is I tried to comply with the code enforcement order. I have lower back and hip problems, but the city of Victoria demands I cut the grass. In doing so, I demonstrated how difficult it was for me to mow the deeper ditch behind my property at 515 Bramblebush Lane. In the process of mowing, I fell, stretching and aggravated my lumbar spine and twisted my ankle. In pulling my mower from the ditch, the wheel broke off. Due to my injuries and the angle of the ditch, it prevents me from operating a mower at an angle. Again, I'm not physically capable of mowing the city ditch. The city stated coincided with heavy summer rains that caused an increase in the growth of grass and weeds. The city council called on staff to enforce the 1969 ordinance. However, even with heavy rains, the city doesn't have to mow the grass more than 3 times a year. I had made multiple calls to people with the city staff. I'd made multiple calls to two people with the city staff keep Victoria beautiful and council member Tom Halapaska without success. If the city would cover or put a drain pipe to even out the ditch, I would be more than glad to do my part in keeping Victoria beautiful. I thank you in advance for your help and support in resolving this matter. Please feel free to contact me. You want me to give his number?
Maybe, are you going to keep the letter or maybe give us a copy?
You can have the letter.
Okay, just leave it with
I'll
us.
just leave, I won't say his number.
When you're through.
If you have any other questions or concerns, signed by Daniel J. Lopez, 515 Bramblebush Lane, resident. And then he included a copy of the Victoria Advocate article on September the 12th, 2010. Apparently, he had contacted the Advocate at the time, and they had done a story on it. He's just one of many that are disabled or whatever that I had talked to. I'll tell you what, it was a real experience talking to all the people I had. Man, there was one elderly lady, and she wears her life alert button around her neck, and she just thanked me profusely for bringing this issue up, and because she had to pay somebody to go behind her property and mow. And I think that's sad, and I really don't want to see that as the city of Victoria. I hope that you will get everything done that you say you're going to do, get it resolved, get it on the books, so we don't have to do this again. And I appreciate you for your time, and I appreciate all the attention it's been. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up, and I know if we don't do it, you'll let me know, right?
You bet you do.
You bet. You're free.
I don't
And
mind walking the street, I don't mind walking up here either.
I understand, and this is a reminder, you know, all the council members are very receptive, so feel free to contact any of us at any time. Okay, citizens' communication still open for anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Gary Harlan, 502 Blythe Road, Victoria, and my concern wasn't addressed. And so Mr. Kaminsky wasn't timed in 5 minutes, so I think, well, it may take me a little bit longer, but I'll keep it as brief as I can. I wanted to ask you all sitting there tonight if you really thought and believed that everybody in their daily life should be as safe as possible, but I think I answered my own question. You believe in your safety, you have an armed police officer sitting there. I saw a sign on the door coming in, no concealed handguns, no guns. Okay, so we're past the safety point. Well, I want to speak to primarily the mowing of the right-of-ways, the easements in that fashion. We've heard a lot about safety lately, and I'm going to take just a second. Even the president of the University of Houston seems to believe that adult people can't safely cross the street in Victoria to get to class without, I mean, I'm talking about a street that would be protected by a crosswalk, a designated probably pedestrian sign, maybe even the little animated red and green people to say go now and don't go now, you know, maybe and I'm sure traffic signals. Okay, if any of you are familiar with Blythe Road out in Northcrest, we don't have any of that. We don't have sidewalks. We don't have curbs. We don't have shoulders. The roads are pretty narrow. And as most of y'all know, because I've talked to several of you, the speed limits aren't, for all practical purposes, aren't enforced at all. Now, you're asking me to mow your property, and it's about 10 feet. I measure that's about right. If I measure to the edge of the pavement, then you're asking me, or no, telling me by ordinance that I have to mow within 12 inches of cars passing by if they're driving the speed limit of 30 miles an hour. I've been on that corner since 1969. Very few people drive the speed limit on Blythe. It's more like 45. We don't even look up unless you're running 50 miles an hour. And so my whole deal is you believe in your safety and you furnish him probably, and you should, body armor. If he's not wearing, I know most of the officers do. So we want him to be safe. Aren't we? Shouldn't we be extended that same courtesy of being safe? But you tell me to mow within 12 inches. It's 12 inches right here from a car that, as I'm mowing this way, is approaching me from the back at a minimum of 30 miles an hour. And they're not breaking the speed limit. They're driving in the street, on the edge, perhaps, but still, you know, I'm pushing a mower that's running. I don't know. I can't see them. I can't hear them. Nothing. Okay, so that's my issue there, part of it. And keep in mind, the only protection we have is probably a long sleeve shirt or blouse and/or, long, and pants, long-legged pants. That's the only protection we're offered. In contrast, let me ask you this, if an employee of the city was mowing that easement out there on Blythe, what would their protection be? And I'll come back with pictures if you'd like for me to. I'll go by any work site in town. First of all, the street would probably be closed at Millette on that end and probably at Glasgow on the other end saying street closed to through traffic. But at least it would have cones and they'd have all kind of signs and cones and stuff like that. Probably even a police car sitting there while they were working, because I watched them working at other places, not even on the edge of the street, but in the ditch. And they have a lot more protection because we don't have any. Okay. I submit to you that it is a very dangerous situation. I mow about 1,600 square feet. I have a corner. I live on the corner of Tyne and Blythe. So I mow about 1,600 square feet and also trim and take care of 4 culverts in the drainage, because there's no coverage. They're all in the drainage ditch out there. I'm glad somebody brought up, I think Mr. Kaminsky said that this ordinance was passed 25 years ago. Y'all have the numbers somewhere, you can find them. What in the world has traffic done in the last 25 years? It probably was a reasonable ordinance 25 years ago. I know we moved in on Blythe in 1969. A car came by once or twice a day. It was unusual. But now you have to remember, just in the last 2 or 3 years, they built Shalimar School out there on Millette, and they built Terra Vista Addition there, and it has thrown tremendous traffic out there. You just can't believe. The little street that we live on our corner, Tyne, is 3 blocks. And the people come out at Terra Vista, instead of turning on Ball Airport, or not all of them do, but some of them, instead of turning on Ball Airport going down to Glasgow or Millette, they come on down the 3 blocks from Tyne to Blythe and use it. So tremendous difference in traffic. And really, my whole issue is, I'm saying I'm not going to get much reception to it, is that you rescind the whole ordinance. It's passed 25 years ago. It might have been reasonable at that time, but it's certainly not reasonable to expect the citizens of Victoria to mow your property and expose themselves to 12 inches of passing cars and the danger that involves. And by the way, if any of you would like to substantiate my remarks, you're all invited to come out and mow your easement at my house. I'm making myself available for you anytime. And so I'd really urge you to take that up. Now, probably, it was mentioned here today.
And conclude your remarks.
I'm almost through.
Thank you, sir.
One remark, about the dumbest remark I've ever heard made in this building, in this room, was a former councilman who the people in his district had the good sense to call him home a few years ago, sit right up there, and he was kindly mentioned here today and said, well, you have to think about this easement as being your property. You just can't use it for anything. And folks, that pretty well sums it up. Anyhow, I appreciate your time, and I will stop, but from my point, it's strictly a safety issue, and you shouldn't be requiring any citizen of Victoria to do it, me or anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harlan. Citizens' communication still open. If anyone else? Again, name and address for the record, and try to limit your comments to 5 minutes or less.
This won't take me 5 minutes. Okay, I cut with my lawnmower Leary Lane, because I've got a storage locker there on Leary Lane, and I go towards the traffic, and I've got the reflector thing on, like you see at gas stations. So by facing the traffic, I can see if they're going to move over or not. If they don't, I'll jump in the ditch. I'm an athlete. I'm in shape. That's all I'm going to say. Was that 1 minute? So it's a matter of paying attention. But I understand what they've all been saying. Their situation is different than mine. Okay. Thank you.
Your name and address for the record?
Do I need to give my name or?
Yes, sir.
Plastic, I'm Coach T. Redmond, Tom Redmond.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Redmond. That'll suffice. Okay, come on forward. Yes, sir.
I'll keep it brief. My name is Corey Sturm. I live at 204 Nottingham. I'm required by ordinance to mow an easement that backs up to Salem. In 2 years, I have had 2 hit and runs go through my fence on that property. My insurance on my property has gone up because of that increased risk. And so I'm just kind of mentioning what he said, which is the ordinance is making me mow in a place that compromises my safety. Another thing I found on that easement while mowing was a loaded shotgun shell. I called the Victoria Police Department and they came and seized the loaded shotgun shell. I'm glad that I found it before I ran it over, but I'm just putting it out there as food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Citizens communication, all right.
My name is Ernest Brish. I live at 107 Glenmore, and I've got one of the right-of-ways that y'all forgot to look at. My back fence on Glasgow is 35 feet to the fence. I got a ditch that's 4 to 4.5 feet deep that I mow. I wouldn't mind mowing 10 feet out from my fence to keep it clean, so it's easy for whoever mows to go ahead and mow it. But that ditch is deep, and I mow my neighbors and my other neighbors because they're both disabled. And I just help them all out. But I'm glad that y'all are thinking about doing this, and hopefully we can get something done to where we can continue doing this and be safe. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, anyone else? Don't be shy.
My name is Ovidio Escalante, 4606 East North. You have a city right away on my west side of me. I have been maintaining that road for 30 years with no recognition or appreciation. My neighbor to the west doesn't do nothing. Trees fall down, I cut them up and take care of them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay. Citizens communication still open. Anyone else? Okay.
Advocate declining to set the record straight? Okay.
Okay. Excuse me just 1 minute, Ms. Scott?
She had said she would leave the letter, and I think.
Oh,
she's
yes,
gonna
ma'am.
give
Okay.
us the
Ms.
letter.
Henry, hand it to these guys over here.
John, take that letter from
That-
Ms. Henry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I thank everybody that came out here on this?
Sure, you can have a few seconds. Absolutely. Oh, and I was going to say the same thing. We're going to go ahead and close citizens communication, but I do appreciate everyone taking the time to come and communicate with us. It helps. It does. You know, we may not always agree on every little detail, but we're going to do the best we can to improve the situation. I hope that everyone sees that there's a lot of different situations out there, and there's not always a perfect fit for everything, but we'll do the best we can. So thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, certainly, too. Okay, so citizens' communication is closed, and then we're going to move, we have one ordinance without a public hearing. Let's do that one, C1.
Item C1 is an ordinance amending the 2016-2017 City of Victoria General Fund budget to provide funding in the amount of $442,000 for the operation of the Riverside Golf Course, providing for savings, providing for an effective date. This is the second and third reading.
Council?
Make a motion to adopt item C2.
One. It was C1.
I'm sorry, C1.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on C1. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, C1 passes. The next C2 and 3 do have public hearings, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do C2.
Item C2 is an ordinance amending Article 2 of Chapter 18 of the City Code related to retirement to update and revise content for compliance and relevance, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for publication, codification, and savings, and declaring an effective date.
Okay, let's open the public hearing on C2 first. Now, anyone can speak to this item alone, now would be the time. You can't come forward just for this. Okay. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing on C2, and I'll entertain a motion to get it on the floor.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, motion is seconded. Miss Martha Johnny, did you have an update before we?
I do have some just general comments, if you would please entertain that. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm actually here just to let you be aware that this is an effort, and I think the CM1 goes into explaining some of the changes that we're making to the city code. It does not, however, change anything in how we administer the TMRS benefit plan. It's just pretty much a cleanup of housekeeping items as we went through as a city leadership team and reviewed codes that were prevalent in our departments. This is one that fell into the HR department that I reviewed and updated to today's relevance. I can entertain any questions on that. I did, however, invite Sean Thompson, who's our regional manager from TMRS. I thought this might be a good opportunity to have him come and just give a brief overview of the TMRS system, since we have not done that in some time. And in short, for those of you that aren't familiar with TMRS, it's a hybrid system. And so there's a contribution that the employee makes, and the city also makes a contribution. That matches 2-to-1 on the retirement. When an employee retires from the city, then that combines as their retirement annuity. And there's several options, and it goes into quite a bit of detail with regards to that. But an overview Sean can provide. I also wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Wanda North. She's a great asset from our HR team here at the City of Victoria. And so Wanda will keep Sean and I both honest with regards to the details on TMRS. So, Sean?
Well, is Sean going to explain a little bit more about a hybrid versus a defined plan? Because I think that's critical
Good,
for the
yeah.
public to understand that.
Yes.
Is that a yes, Sean? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. On behalf of TMRS, I just want to start off by saying thank you for inviting us out. TMRS always welcomes being able to come to your city and help you better understand what your TMRS benefits are. And for me, it's a extra special time to come back to Victoria. Me and my wife adopted our baby girl about 3.5 years ago from Victoria, so I'm always happy to come back here. So
Welcome back.
thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
We have houses for sale if you want to move.
Yeah.
What size is those easements?
Touche.
They're not all that
You
wide.
did good.
Yeah.
All right, I digress. Let's first start with the benefits that TMRS offers, or that you offer to your employees. TMRS is just the plan administrator. So one of the best things about TMRS is these benefits are completely left up to you guys, local control over your benefits and what those level of benefits are. The employee deposit rate is a 6% rate, so that is based off of all gross compensation to the employee. So they are actually contributing 6% of their own money into TMRS. That then is matched on the matching ratio, which the city has adopted as a 2-to-1 match. Then we have an updated service credit provision, which basically is an inflationary tool that helps keep the employee's retirement more in line with what their current salary is or what the city plan is. The COLA is also an additional provision that a city could have adopted. This funds a cost of living adjustment for the employee once they become a retired member. After they've been retired for at least a year, then they would be eligible for a small cost of living adjustment based on the consumer price index that we use to figure out what inflation is from one year to the next. As an employee doesn't ever receive the city matching any of the updated service credit or any of the COLA that I just talked about until they have reached retirement eligibility. That is based on a 20-year, any age, so it does not matter what their age is when they reach that 20 years, or if they are age 60, then they have to at least have 5 years of service. So whichever way comes first, they are then eligible to retire the account. Once they retire the account, like Cheryl just talked about, we're a cash balance plan. So we take the employee's money and we combine it with the city matching, and we annuitize it, and we pay them a monthly benefit for the rest of their life, and possibly for the rest of their beneficiary's life, depending on what option they select at retirement. You have a 5-year vesting mark. So that what vesting means is that once the employee has reached 5 years, they are then eligible to retire later on once they turn age 60. Okay, so if they ever terminate employment with the city and go somewhere else, they can leave their funds in TMRS. They will continue to earn interest, and they can later retire at a later date. If they choose to take their money out and refund their account, they have that option to do so. And at that time, the city would not be obligated to match their funds once it's refunded and withdrawn from TMRS. The city also has another optional provision called the Restricted Prior Service Credit. This gives employees that work for another public agency or public authority prior to coming to work for the city of Victoria, it gives them a time credit only for that time served in that other public authority or public agency. So if I work for the state of Oklahoma for 10 years, I land a job in Victoria, I move down here, Victoria is going to give me a 10-year time credit towards my retirement eligibility because I was with that public authority or public agency. This also includes military, so this is a good benefit for those veterans that you're giving that time served. It does not actually add any money to their account, so there really is no financial cost to you, the city, having this option adopted, but it does make those employees that have that time eligible to retire sooner. Then finally, we have the supplemental death benefit for both active and retirees. For active employees, this is an additional benefit that sits on top of their retirement. So if they were to pass away, their beneficiary would get 1 times their annual salary. This is a tax-free benefit because it is a death benefit. So their retirement would be handled in one way, and then they would receive a supplemental death benefit of 1 times their annual salary. Then as a retiree, once they've reached retirement eligibility and they've retired, then once they pass away, their beneficiary, it doesn't matter what option they chose at retirement, when they pass away, their beneficiary would receive a set amount of $7,500. So real quick, I just want to give you some history and some update on TMRS. I'm not going to go through every bullet point on here. The main one that I would point out on top of here, it says 866 cities. We actually have over 875 now, but we do not have Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, El Paso, or Galveston. All of those cities have their own retirement system. And as you may have well read or seen in the news, some of them are having difficulties right now, and they are not part of TMRS. Okay, TMRS is not. We don't have any cities that are having those types of issues that you're seeing right now with those other cities.
That's a good brag there, Sean. That's very
Yeah.
good. And I've watched what's going on in Houston and Dallas, and you're exactly right.
Yeah.
They're a mess.
Right. So, and then the next slide that I point out, let's see, is that we have a 6-member board that is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. So we still do have that legislative oversight by the governor's office. This is a quick rundown of our investments. This is a moving asset allocation. We're tweaking it to get it exactly where we want. But what I wanted to point out is that if you look at our 3-year average, it's 5.26% return. That's a little bit lower than what our investment assumption is, which is, you'll find out in the next slide, it's 6.75%. But if you look at our funds since inception, that is the 8.58% number. And you'll find that that's well above our assumed rate of return. So we are trying to be as conservative as we can be while making sure that we are funding these benefits and making them sustainable, not only to this generation, but to the next generation that comes after us. We are a cash balance defined benefit plan, so we are a hybrid. We are not considered a defined contribution plan. A defined contribution plan is your regular 401k, 403b, whatever, where you just, your IRA, where you put a set percentage of your salary into it, and then that's it. You earn investment returns, and then when you retire one day, you hope that you can use all that money up before you pass away or not outlive that money, okay? Then you have a traditional defined benefit plan, which is a retirement system that takes in some type of contributions from employee and employer, and then they basically calculate a retirement generally based off of a formula, and then they provide a lifetime benefit to the retirees. TMRS has kind of the best of both worlds. We're like a defined contribution because the employees are putting in that 6% that I said earlier. Then we are like a defined benefit because then we annuitize it and we pay to the beneficiary, we pay to the retiree and to their beneficiary, possibly depending on what option they select, for the rest of their life. So we are providing a lifetime benefit that the employee never has to worry about running out of their funds. Okay. Like I said, that we have a 6.75% investment return rate, and that is professionally managed by TMRS. So the employees don't have to actually choose their investment options or stay on top of that. Okay. We've made several changes since 2007, to make sure that TMRS is on sound footing going forward. And we believe that we are through all those changes, and hopefully we have done that to reduce the volatility in rates so that cities can better plan and know that their TMRS is going to stay relatively constant based on their plan projections, and that helps better fund their plan as well. So we are now advanced funding things like the COLA. So if I was a brand new employee, part of the city's rate is to fund my COLA from when I make it to retirement 20 years from now. We were not doing that previously. So we've made a series of changes that we know will help us in the future. Some funding basics. Your city, like I said earlier, about the local control type piece, your city is funded as a separate entity. So you guys are responsible for your city's plan. So if benefits become unsustainable, you have the power to make that decision and either reduce benefits or do whatever. If you do not have as great of benefits and you're having trouble recruiting good employees or retaining well-qualified employees, then you can increase your plan to whatever you see fit. So TMRS, we do not care. We want it all left up to you guys to make those decisions, okay?
Sean, I want to
Yes.
just, one clarification there. It's whatever we see. Under TMRS, 7% is the highest. It's a 5, 6, or 7. So it's not, if we wanted to do 10, we couldn't. 7% is the cap there.
That's correct.
And we're at
Yes.
6.
Yes.
So, okay.
So each year, our consulting actuary, and our in-house actuary, they're going to determine what is called the ADEC. That's the actuarially determined employer contribution. That is, by state statute, your city has to pay that every single year. Okay, so there are no pension contribution holidays, if you will, which is what has gotten some of these other cities into trouble, where they say, you know what, the budget's pretty tight this year. We owe 10% to our retirement fund, but let's only pay 5% and we'll make it up in the good years. Okay, well then what you've done is you've started to underfund your plan. You're no longer actually paying what's required in hopes that you can make it up in years in the future. And what happens? You don't actually make that up. Okay. In TMRS, that can't happen. You don't get any holidays from paying that determined rate. So again, pensions in the news, benefits that are not sustainable are out there also. In TMRS, like it was just pointed out, there's a 5, 6, or 7% employee deposit rate. So the city council can't just say, we love our employees, we're going to grant a 12% deposit rate, okay, with a 2-to-1 match. And we're just going to make it so amazing that we're going to get all the top employees to come work for us. But then, we can't fund it, 5 years down the line, okay? So we have a set level of benefits, and even within those levels, you all would have the ability to change those if the benefits were, if they became unsustainable, okay? Again, regular contributions, those are not being made in some of these situations. They are assuming a unrealistic investment return assumption. Some pension plans were assuming 9% very recently, okay? We're a little bit ahead of the curve, and we're down at 6.75, so we're very, very conservative in that. And then, of course, there's the controversy over the local governance versus the state governance. But all those are issues that we're seeing affect us. Lastly, I just want to leave this with, these numbers are a little bit out of date. That says 2015, so we're actually a little bit higher than this, but we're over 85.8% funded. Okay, we have $4.03 billion in unfunded actuarial liability, which that's a big number. Our total fund is $26 billion of assets. So when you take what the asset, all that $4 billion that we owe, over all the employees, we're 85% funded. Anything over 80% is generally thought of as a well-funded plan. TMRS goes a little bit beyond that, and we say, what is the trend? Are you trending up or down? Because you could be 85% funded, but for the last 10 years, you've dropped a percentage each year, and you were 95%. So in that situation, something's happening. Either benefits are unsustainable, or you're not paying your required rate. So that would be an issue. Okay, so just because we're over 80, that doesn't mean everything. But we have been trending up for the last 7-8 years since 2007. Once we made all those changes, we took a little dip, and then now we've been trending up. I think we're over 86.7 as of December of 2016. And all of these plans, all these benefits are funded over a period of no more than 25 or 30 years. So again, that is keeping in line with keeping this generation of employees paying for their benefits, okay? And this taxpayer group paying for this employee's benefits. So we have a closed amortization period, which we did not used to have. So it would always just be re-amortized every year. So in about 18 years, we're going to see a pretty good drop in your rate because there's a big piece of the rate that's going to actually drop off due to us closing this period back in 2007. And that is all my prepared remarks. If y'all have any questions for me, I'd love to answer them.
I have a question. On the benefits, the 5-year vesting, when did that take into effect? Because I just saw that it was corrected and changed from 10 years to 5 years. When did that go into effect?
I do not have, I should have had a sheet with me. I don't know exactly when that ordinance was passed.
I would say mid-90s.
Yeah.
Mid-90s.
So,
And we adopted those ordinances to adopt those correctly. We just did not go back and change this code to update it in its entirety.
And I will be
It's been
getting
a while.
Wanda and staff some of the dates of when
Okay.
things were adopted, and so that may be coming across your eyes as well soon.
Just for our better records.
So, this is kind of a way that I think of this, it's a defined benefit once a person retires, but prior to that, it's not really a defined benefit, so is that a good way to think of it?
That's a pretty
The
decent
benefit
way.
becomes
Yes,
defined.
Yes.
Okay,
That's a good way. We do have a piece, that updated service credit is a formula-based option that can be adopted by a city. And so due to that formula, that is also a defined benefit little piece, if you will. But ultimately, it doesn't become that until you retire. So that's a pretty good way to look at it, yes.
Okay, and
The way I looked at that, is that, I'll take myself for example. I've been putting money in, the city's been putting money in. So when I get ready to retire, those 2 buckets of money are going to be put together in 1 bucket of money. And then they're going to look at my life expectancy. And if I choose to leave a beneficiary, my spouse, if he gets a portion of my retirement when I pass away, they look at his age, and so they calculate the age, expected life expectancy, and what I've put in, what the city's put in. It's not going to be what my last 3 years of salary has been. I'm not going to get that when I retire. It's going to be, a percentage of that, and that's kind of how I look at that.
right, the results of the calculation is based
Yes.
upon what's available for you
Yes, that's
to be
exactly.
spread
It's
out.
not based
Yeah,
on
I
those
like
last
that.
few years of my salary
Yeah.
or any other employee's salary.
I think it's
Okay, now
responsible.
that you mentioned that, when I was reading through the document, okay, it was talking about an employee that passes away, and then the benefits go to the wife, but then the wife dies, and it goes to the kids, or no? Does it stop at the husband?
It
At the
stop- it
At the
stops
first
with their-
beneficiary?
And that's a very broad, unless they've done one of those 15-year, there's an option in there with the 15-year lookout, but generally speaking, no, the children do not get that.
Okay.
So,
Right, we have a survivor option which pays to one beneficiary and then that would be it. Or we
Okay.
have a 5, 10, or 15-year guaranteed term, which would pay to the employee or the retiree for their life. And then if they pass away within that term, then it would pay to their beneficiary and that person would then name another beneficiary because TMRS is guaranteeing it for a 15-year
For
period.
15, okay,
So if I-
that's
yeah.
the, okay,
So that may happen, but ultimately that's only going to happen for the
Yeah.
15 years and
Okay.
the money is already accounted for based on the life expectancy
Okay.
in that 15-year period, yeah.
yeah, that's what I wanted clarity on.
And I
Thank you.
just wanted to add one thing to what Ms. Garrett said, is that city contribution, employees do not see that match until retirement. You know, when they get their investment notices or, you know, what's in TMRS, it's really what the employee has contributed. And when they get ready to retire, then they see that city contribution on top of that. So we sometimes get confused about that, but anyway.
So how much does this cost us? Is it a percentage or just a flat fee? I'm just
oh,
curious.
it's a percent.
Percent of the assets or payroll? Okay.
It's percent of the payroll.
I don't need numbers, I'm just
don't
curious.
It's in your budget document, so it's a little over 16%. And part of that is catching up with that unfunded liability, just like we're doing the health fund, where we've gone in and we're doing that OPEB to
Oh.
catch up with the unfunded liability.
No, I meant the fee to TMRS
Oh,
for their expertise. I just curious.
There's not, I guess it comes out of that.
There is an administrative cost, and this is another good thing. Thank you for asking this
Yeah.
question. TMRS, our administrative costs are 0.25%, whereas in a defined contribution plan, you'd have upwards of 1% of the total plan assets. So 1 basis point, or I'm sorry, 100 basis points versus 24 basis points. So TMRS is really providing a very well-structured benefit for a quarter of the cost.
And it's included
Okay.
in that percent that we're charged. When-
That's-
when
yeah,
you-
our-
when
In
you
the
see-
contributions,
When you see
yes.
that, yeah, I think that's when I said they're not charging on top of that.
Yes,
so.
ma'am.
Right.
Okay, I understand. So you are in Austin. How many, I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. How many employees are in TR, actual and staff?
So we have just over about 100.
Really?
Because we were not fully diversified until we started in 2007 diversifying. We had a very heavy portfolio in fixed income. And so we only had a small investment staff. And now we're, you know, you saw that pie chart, we're in everything. And so we've got to, you know, add managers and investment
Okay.
personnel for that. So we've, over the last 5 years, we've probably grown by like 30 employees.
Wow.
Just- We're running out of parking, so.
They used to be
Okay.
they used to be heavily invested in bonds.
Absolutely.
And they recognized that the return on that, you know, they had to change. And we were privileged at one time to have a city manager that sat on the board with Charles Wimmelhan.
Yes,
During a lot of
absolutely.
those
Yes,
changes that was
yes.
going on to make sure the sustainability was there. So,
Very good. Okay, council, we did get a motion in a second, didn't we? Good discussion. And that is, are we on C1, Mr. Gush?
C2.
C2. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, ayes have it. Thank you. C3,
C3 is a resolution approving the Community Development Block Grant for 2017-18 one-year action plan and authorizing the city manager to submit all required documentation for the fiscal year 2017-2018 CDBG program and amendments thereto to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and declaring an effective date.
let's open the public hearing on C3. If there's anyone that would like to speak to this item specifically, now would be the time. Seeing no one coming to the podium, we'll close the public hearing on C3. Entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions or discussion? We've seen this before already. Yeah, this was last time. Okay,
2 weeks ago.
okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, ayes have it. The consent agenda, 2 items.
Item D1 is approval of minutes of the regular meeting of July 18th, 2017, and item D2 is a resolution adopting guidelines and criteria for tax abatement agreements entered into by the City of Victoria and declaring an effective date.
Move to adopt.
We have motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, ayes have it. What we want to do, council, and I may have failed to mentioned this earlier, but we're fixing to go into the resolutions, and the first four, E 1, 2, 3, 4, are really just procedural. Wanted to let Mr. Reyna pass out, actually do F 3 and 4 prior to us voting on those four, if that's acceptable. So he wants to deliver the budget and certified tax roll, and he has some remarks for us. That's okay? Cool.
Go ahead.
All right, it's all yours. You know, I didn't recognize you earlier. I'm sorry you came up to the podium.
It's hard, I
and
know.
Sorry about that.
My wife does the same, don't worry about it.
And then John came up and said, John, you have remarks? Okay.
What do you want to start again? I apologize.
You're delivering the proposed annual budget.
Oh, you want to start with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then the certified tax roll. Whatever, I don't care which order you go in.
And one of the reasons we'd like to do that is because of the tax rate that we're asking you to publish, you know, we took that and is included in the budget. So Gilbert can talk a little bit about what we're doing with that extra penny.
Thank you.
What the officer's passing out, it's just to take home and read. If you want to know about the effective tax rate calculation, every year I pass it out because you can just look through it and kind of visualize it and see if you want to learn some more stuff about it. But I'm not planning to talk about it. I will hit some of the highlights in the presentation in a minute. But with that said, of course, in front of you, you have the book, the big book. In there's a transmittal letter, which kind of talks about the overall budget in bullet points format. It kind of summarizes it. And also in there, you have a calendar of the budget process, talking about the different dates we're going to meet and talk about the budget, public hearings and the votes and et cetera, and when the vote's going to happen. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we are going to have several work sessions coming up soon to talk about all the funds and give you some time to kind of digest information. I'm not telling you what to do, of course not. But, I would start off with a transmittal letter, read through it. It kind of gives you a high level. If you find something that's really you want to key in, then go to that section and kind of dive into the detail if you want to. No, have at it. Start on page 1 and just go forward. If you find some math there, please let me know. But we try to correct those before you got them. Okay? Now, I'm going to talk quickly about the appraised values. Is that right? Is that okay with you? And kind of surprised me because I was going to wait towards the end, but it's okay. So, real briefly, now, what you're seeing right here are kind of summary numbers, netted against all exemptions, et cetera. So the certified tax rate, basically what that is, that's what they have certified the values at. Compared to last year, we had an increase of 1.67. The appraisals under protest are still values out there that they're still under protest being decided. As people are protesting some of the high values, et cetera. That's last year's values. We have to use last year's values, not the new value. So you see an increase of 13.29%. The frozen values, of course, as you will know, back in 2005, we passed the law and taxes for senior citizens and some other type of categories are frozen. Tax rate might go up, but their payment stays frozen. Now, when I say net taxable appraised value, that's the number that we use to generate revenue for the general fund. So if you set a tax rate, it's based upon that number, okay? The taxable value frozen is what I wanted to know. I receive about $2.9 million in frozen values. I want to extrapolate that. What does that mean in valuation? So I do extrapolation. It comes out to $531 million in values. It's just an estimate. And of course, from last year, it increased, which of course, my collections on frozen are increasing. That should increase as well. So the bottom line, compared to last year, after net tax appraised value, meaning the money that values that we use to bring in money, increased by 1.61, okay? It gets a little better. Okay, what you see in here is the full gross values without net exemptions, okay? On the bottom, this certified tax rate, it ties back to that first page. I'm just showing from the gross level, residential as a category grew by 1.9 without the exemption. Land, other than ag, went down. Commercials, industrials went up by 1.5. Last year, it went down by 9, if you recall. Agriculture went up. Tax exempt property, even though it's tax exempt, some property is still taxed even though they're classified as tax exempt. So you got a certified tax rate increase of 1.67. Here on this slide, if you're interested to see the overall market values gross, in other words, what is the gross residential land, commercial without any exemption? Those are the values compared to last year. Of course, I have given you the percent change. Overall, we have an overall $4.9 billion valuation within the city area. That's an increase of 1.65% over last year. Now, the one I find interesting is this one, plus this one more slide, of course. If you take all your exemptions out, you come back to you take your total value exemptions, you come back to the certified tax rate, which I showed you on the first page, back to 1.3 billion. Last year we had 4.2. We have an increase of 1.67. We don't have any annex property like last year, but this year, compared to last year on new improvements, in other words, property that has never been taxed before, last year was 74,000. This year was 38.8. I used 38,000 back in June, if you recall. So we had a huge decrease on new improvements. Now, if you want to compare apples to apples, this is what I do here. I like this slide. I have the same thing, got the certified, the under protest, or frozen, and I come up with a net tax appraisal, the same number you saw on the first slide. There's that 1.2%. But in order to compare apples to last year, you have to deduct that new improvements of 3.8 million. So you're down to 3.657 compared to last year's 3.652. You have an increase on actual apples-to-apples comparison of 0.14. That makes sense to y'all? How that logic flies? Now, as you recall, back in June, my assumption was an increase of 0.57. Well, how could I miss that? Very simple. There's a valuation that I was not aware of, a property that was value reduction. It's a 25D section, is in law. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm not aware of that. If you don't ask for that information, they don't give it to you. So I've learned my lesson. Now I know what to ask for. But there is a particular property, I'm going to give the name, it was valued about $1 million decrease adjustment. So that $1 million cost, it went from 1.57, what I thought it would be around, reduced it down to 1.14%. So, because I needed to find out I know it's going to be close, but I didn't know it was going to be that far apart. And the reason why, when I got the numbers on that July 25th, I had that new valuation that a certain property was brought down by $1 million. So, and I have a copy, I can give it to you later if y'all want to look at it, but I just want to explain how, I don't expect it to be perfect, but I should be close to it. So bottom line is that back in effective tax rate, back in June, I thought it would be 59, came in about 58, some change. The reason why, well, Gilbert, if you reduce your values, you should go up on your effective tax rate. Yeah, but not when they start changing that beginning number so much. The whole game changes then. You got to start from scratch. So that's one reason. That's all the values. So if you have any questions, I'm going to move on. Property taxes. Here we got maintenance tax of 34.26 compared to last year 33.85, an increase of 0.41. Debt side, 25.26, last year's 25.07, increase of 19. The total tax rate that we're proposing in the current tax and the budget is 59.52. Compared to the effective tax rate of 58.52, you have an increase of 1 penny. As you recall, we had the discussion several weeks ago, and that's that 1 penny. It represents the 2 officers, their vehicle, uniform, and equipment, funding for the parks area, and also we increased the debt side on the tax and the debt rate to generate a little extra income. The rollback tax rate per the city ordinance is 60.56. On the state, it'd be another penny to that. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Just let that slide stay there for a minute so I can look at it closer.
Well, I can,
Thank you.
oh, that's it?
Yeah, you read it faster than I can
Well,
follow.
you know, y'all been here a while, you know, the mowing, you know, I don't want to take too much of your time because we're gonna have a lot of time spent together next month. So I don't want to, you know, put my welcome.
We haven't voted to appoint you to all those spots yet, so.
Hey, that's fine. That's fine. I understand.
Sorry.
Whatever council wants to do. But anyway, I went kind of fast and I apologize and I was slow down. I put it in gear, lower gear. But that's where we're at right now. Now, if you compare last year's revenue to what we proposed in this year's in the general fund 2018, we have an increase of $419,000, 2.8%. Of course, what makes that up, you got on the new valuation generates, before I go further, remember, these numbers include that 1 cent. I'm sorry, it's not a whole penny on the M&O, it's only 0.0077 on the M&O and 0.0023 on the debt side. So the 0.0077 increase on the M&O side, it's in these numbers, okay? Ms. Scott, you look at me, you like, okay, I can start this again. We went up 1 penny. On that 1 penny, there's two categories. You got the maintenance and operation tax for the general fund, and you have debt. On the M&O side, that 1 cent portion of that goes to the M&O, and that number is 0.0077. On the debt side of that 1 penny is 0.0023. If you add those two numbers up, it comes back to the 1 penny. What we have here is only the effect of the 0.0077, okay? That's incorporated in these numbers. So on the new valuation, the new money coming in, that's about $129,000. On the old values that been there from prior years, we generated $290,000. So the total increase because of that 0.0077 is that $277,000. It's in that $419,000. So majority of that revenue generated from that increase in the tax is coming from the old valuation side. Okay. I know y'all looking at it. I know this is real quick.
Gilbert, I'm just thinking, if we did not do the 1 penny
I have that.
increase, okay, then how much money would that be? And it's 13, 1.
If we didn't have the increase in the general fund side, the new valuation would be $126,000. On the old valuation, it'd be $16,000. So you have an increase of total $142,000, i.e. 142 plus 277, 419. Does that make sense? That's why I said the biggest bulk of it is in that old valuation because they're generating more of the revenue for the new increase in the tax.
Weren't we really thinking it would be a higher valuation when we looked at that 1% or that 1 cent?
Yeah, I'm not getting the debt side.
Okay.
You still got another $85,000 on the debt side.
But we were thinking that the valuations would be higher.
Oh, no.
No?
No, I never thought the valuation, property values?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Didn't you start at 1% increase? It ended up being, is it 1.6? Is that what it was on your previous slide? No, it doesn't matter. You don't have to go back.
No. When I started this, my valuations back in June was 0.57 increase. Okay? Without the new increase in added value. A while ago, I showed you, if you take that $38,000, it only went up 0.14. So our values didn't go up hardly anything. It's pretty flat. Am I answering the question? I'm not sure.
And the effective tax rate, though, that we were assuming when we were trying to put numbers together
Which is
earlier,
0.59.
it came in a little bit lower than we thought. The
Yes, it
effective
came
tax
lower,
rate did.
and I tried to explain that. The reason why it came lower, because my beginning numbers from last year, I had that $1 million adjustment that I was not anticipating at all in my calculation at all.
So what we presented to council, and I'm trying to find my sheet, a few weeks ago on, I don't see it, on what we thought that the effective tax rate would be plus the 1 penny is a little bit higher than what we're presenting tonight.
Back then, yes.
Yes, I mean.
It's coming out 58 now.
Instead
but
of-
Yes,
yes.
yes, ma'am. Because I was still using the numbers from June.
Sure.
Again, I have mentioned before in June, once those numbers go, just focus on the true values.
We'll need a little time, just keep going.
That's all I
Okay.
have on the valuations.
Okay.
I just threw in a slide there on in the table. It's like I'd use the increase in residential net of exemption, 1.9% increase, and I filter that in there. In other words, I assume a 1.9% increase in valuation, and what would the tax consequences be on each different type of category values?
Okay.
That's just more FYI there. Take time, look at it. I know when it comes to number, it takes more time to sit there and hit, I'm hitting you cold with it right now. But like I said, we're gonna have a whole month of June to talk about it. But the budget includes that 1 cent tax rate.
And we can go down, but we can't go up, once we set that number here.
You can go up, but you just have to restart your calendar and your
That's what-
hearings and
oh, I
everything,
know.
so.
We're not gonna do that.
We can always go up.
That's true. Yeah, no, I
But-
stand corrected.
But yeah.
No, I
it-
understand.
it's- And that's why when we come tonight to publish in that tax rate, it's always good if we know pretty
Mm-hmm.
much what council wishes to do on the tax rate.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay. The budget you gave us tonight is based on 59.52. Not the 60.15 that we had talked about.
That's correct. The 5952, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because the
Because that
budget.
includes a penny.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, it does, and it includes those 2 new police
ma'am.
officers, the additional money for parks, and
Yes,
putting money
okay.
into the additional money to debt service side.
Okay,
So that's
what
correct.
I had
Yes,
asked
ma'am.
before was, I wanted to make sure that we were talking about 59.52.
59, 50, yeah.
And that's what's going to be published in the paper, right?
If council wishes to stay with that number, that's the number that's gonna be published.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've cut a lot of things, and tonight we added 45,000 for mowing. We've cut lots of things. One of the things I've been concerned about is street sweeping. It's just something that's sort of coming to mind because of the way we're doing our streets now. And our residential streets probably could use street sweeping. But that was cut from the budget a while ago, and I'm hearing we can go down, but the rate we set tonight is the rate we're gonna be publishing. And so I know I'm getting glared at, but I'm wondering whether 59.52 is a high enough rate or whether we need to inch it up a little bit more. I don't think we gain very much income per penny from what we've said before. So, I don't know.
I'd like to clarify, the street sweeping is still in the budget, it's just not, we're not doing as many rotations in the residential area. So, and that was established
true.
a couple of years ago,
Sure.
but we're still doing, what we did with the street sweeping is we split the cost out. 20% is being paid out of general fund, 20%, right? And then 80% out of
That's
the water
correct.
utility, since it's in regard to the storm sewer. So you'll only see 20% of that in the general fund, but when you get over to the water utility fund, you'll see that 80% of it. So.
That's correct.
But we're still not doing, ideally, when we first presented this program several years ago, we were gonna do rotations in the residential area a lot more frequently, but I think the cost was closer to 600,000 versus 400,000.
That's correct.
And that's just something that's been in my head today. I'm sure that everybody sitting here at the dais has a project or something that they know has been cut that they wish couldn't be. So I'm just wondering whether or not we should look at at least starting, whether we should look at a different number.
Well, I suppose when we get to that item in the agenda, you can, suggest that. That would be the appropriate place in the agenda to do that. I mean, certainly can talk about it anytime, but, okay. Mr. Rain, is that all you have on those two
That's
items?
all, and it's
So we can move into our
resolutions.
resolutions now?
Well, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the budget? Or are you okay? I mean, you can move into the
Yeah.
resolutions anytime
Yeah.
you wish to, and then we can come back to the budget. I do know one of the things when we get to the budget, Cheryl is going to talk about the health fund and the premium increase that we're recommending, which is part of the budget that's being presented. Does not affect the tax rate in any way, so.
Okay.
One thing I do, if we're going to talk about the budget later, I'll hold my comments. So if you want to get into the resolutions,
Why don't we
we're
knock
good.
out these resolutions?
Okay.
Because there's not much of a.
No, there's
Well,
not.
I was gonna say, there's not much of a debate. Ms. Scott may have some comments, which is perfectly acceptable. So just remember, these are housekeeping items, appointing the proper people as required by state law, I assume. So let's start off with E1.
E1 is a resolution calling for public hearings on the 2017-2018 City of Victoria budget on August 24th, 2017, August 29th, 2017, September 5th, 2017, and September 12th, 2017, at 5 p.m. at the council chambers, 107 West Watland Street, and declaring an effective date.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Okay, E2.
E2 is a resolution proposing a tax rate of $0.5952 per $100 valuation, placing a proposal to adopt the tax rate on the agenda of a future meeting as an action item, and calling for public hearings for this proposed tax rate, and declaring an effective date.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No, everybody's looking at me. I'm realizing that I've got 2.5 inches of a budget under me that was based on 0.5952, and so I'm not going to make any further discussion.
Okay. Well, I'm not in a hurry this evening, but I mean, this is your second budget to be here, is that correct? And I don't want to discourage you because things don't happen in one budget. It's very difficult in my experience. So I hope you're here plenty of time to have, you have other opportunities to learn how it works and to have more traction on getting, if you ever want to increase revenue. And, I just don't want you to be discouraged, Ms. Scott.
Thank you.
It takes a while to get things done, as we've seen. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Any further discussion on E2? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, E3.
E3 is a resolution authorizing the publication of the Notice of 2017 Tax Year Proposed Property Tax Rate in accordance with Section 140-010 of the Local Government Code and rules of the Texas Comptroller, as calculating the effective tax rate data has been delivered to the city by the tax assessor, and declaring an effective date.
So move.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Okay, E4.
E4 is a resolution appointing Gilbert Reyna, Jr., CPA, as the representative to perform the effective tax rate and rollback calculations according to Section 26.04C of the Texas Tax Code, and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I know this is a tough one. Mr. Rainey, you didn't get that.
Oh, I did.
I noticed your,
I did.
okay. I'm really giving you a hard time tonight.
No.
Your calculation method is, it seems like a few short years ago, there was 37 steps. Now I'm seeing 52. Wow, things have
Hey.
gotten more complicated, but I trust your work very much.
Hey.
So, thank you.
They're fine.
Sorry. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, thank you. I guess we can do E5 and 6. Continue on, knock those out.
E5 is a resolution accepting an insurance payment from Texas Farm Bureau Insurance Company for a claim on behalf of the city in the amount of $2,097.90, excuse me, let me say that again, $2,097.94, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to accept payment and declaring an effective date.
So move.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any questions?
So why doesn't the city go after the rest?
Thank you for asking. Mayor and council, this is an unusual situation where we had a traffic accident and a vehicle collided with a signal cabinet. It took quite a while for us to get repairs and a final estimate prepared to send to the insurance company. And the owner of the vehicle had a very minimal insurance policy. They had only $25,000 in insurance covering their vehicle. By the time the city was able to provide that information to the insurance company, they had already made payment in the amount of about $22,000, leaving only this amount remaining on the insurance policy. In the time since then, the city has made several attempts to contact the driver of the vehicle to hold him responsible. He was 17 years old at the time of the accident. He has not been responsive. We've tried multiple addresses, multiple letters to try to get a hold of him. I am not confident that the city will be able to recover the remainder of the amount, but I put this item on the agenda in part to seek direction from council. If council would prefer me to continue to pursue this item, we could pursue litigation. We could seek to sue the driver of the vehicle for the remainder of the damage that was done to the city's traffic signal cabinet. And potentially, after receiving an award from a judge, we could pursue recovery of that amount. That's a long, complicated process with costs of its own. And so I'm really seeking guidance from council. If you would prefer me to continue with the process of pursuing the driver, I'm happy to do so. But at the same time, we have an insurance company who needs some resolution about whether or not we're going to accept this settlement offer.
I fear it's going to cost more trying to go after a 17-year-old that's unresponsible. So I would cut our losses. I mean, I know it's only 15% recovery, but we need to cut somewhere. I mean, we can't just keep going and going and going.
What do you mean 15% recovery?
Well, if you take the amount of the loss divided by what we're recouping, it's only 15%. So we lost 85% already, and there's no way that we're going to recover that.
22 already, correct?
No, we did not receive the 22. That was paid to the driver of the other vehicle. There was two vehicles involved in the collision.
It's less than 10%.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm wondering, do we have to release this claim
less than
against
10%.
everybody?
We do. In
10%
order to
would be
accept the
3,000.
settlement, they've sent over a general release, which would release both the insurance company and the driver.
Is there any discussion that can be had there?
I have not pursued that yet. I'm happy to do so.
That was
Where's this
my thought.
additional cost going to come from for pursuing it in a civil court?
My office does not have a litigator on staff. And so I have in the past occasionally done litigation. To tell you the truth, I'm not terribly comfortable doing that because it's not something that I do regularly. And so whenever the city litigates matters, I typically hire outside counsel. And that's the expense that would be.
On a contingency basis.
I could look to see
That's
whether
how
an
those
attorney
lawyers
would be
operate. They do. It seems pretty cut and dried. There's a police report.
Sure.
You got a responsible party.
So you don't have like a warrant flagged on him if he ever gets pulled over, or? Seems like that we just sit and wait, we might get something in a year or two.
Right. I know that there were criminal charges in the case that were presented for, I believe he turned across a intersection when he did not have a right-of-way. But that has all been handled already. That criminal case is already closed out.
Damage to city property, all that part of it?
That would be a civil case today. On occasion, we do pursue restitution in those matters when the case is still available. Unfortunately, in this case, the criminal matter was settled or resolved before we were able to pursue it.
Is there a time constraint on it, how far back you can go since it
There's a
happened?
2-year statute of limitations. We're still within that. We could still pursue this.
I'd say see if you can get the lawyer to take it on a contingency basis.
Okay.
I mean, it's less than 10% that the insurance company's gonna cover.
Did we get a motion in a second? We did, right?
We do have a motion and a second.
Okay.
If you put it to a vote and the matter is approved, I would proceed with settlement. If it is voted down, I would continue to pursue this matter in all of the ways that have been discussed here.
Well, I don't even know why it matters if we collect this. That doesn't close it.
Because of
On the
the
amount owed.
form.
Oh, no,
because of
the
the
insurance
form.
company. Didn't you say it releases the claim of everybody?
That's correct.
So
The
if-
insurance company
if we
requires a
accept it-
waiver.
I don't know. That's what I heard.
I think that's the form that the insurance company sent, or
That's
I'm
correct.
guessing that's why you're
And
saying
that's
that.
included in the packet, and it is a full and complete release.
I guess too, what I'm hearing, and I have no way of knowing, is it like if Mr. Bachknight's suggestion, we still have a young man who has no assets or means to pay. I don't know how that's handled. I don't know if that matters. I mean, he was 17 when it happened. He's 18 now. And if we had a judgment against him for whatever, $18,000, his ability, I don't know how that's worked out.
Lien filed in the courthouse.
Yeah.
And goes on the credit history report. And either clear it up or you can have no chance of getting a loan.
Who made the motion originally?
Ricky.
Could he, we can vote no, it doesn't matter if council wants to, and you go try and come back again if it becomes hopeless. I don't have a problem with that. I kind of see that, it looks to me like council's wanting you to go back and try a little harder on this. Not that you haven't, I don't misunderstand what I've said.
No, and I don't misunderstand, and Council, I hope you understand that the reason for having this on the agenda was to get this direction from council.
Okay.
About the direction that you want me to pursue.
Okay.
Because we've tried our normal methods and means in this and have not resolved it. And before we take the extraordinary step of pursuing through litigation, I wanted to make sure that council is on board. So if that's the direction that I'm seeing from council, and I think that, I feel like there's consensus that direction, I'm okay with you withdrawing the motion, and I'll know my marching order.
Well, our net, potentially, I guess our net recovery could be low or half. I mean, I don't know. What are you going after? And then I know your peers out there in the private sector, they're not shy about what they charge. So, I don't know. I'm looking at Mr. Bachknight, trying to think of this through.
Well, if you, I don't know, this contingency's 40%. You recover 60%. Right
Yeah,
now, you're
yeah.
recovering 8.
Yeah, okay. Point taken. I say we just vote on it, and, if we don't want to support it, and you can always send us a memo or a note on results of, if you have a hard time continuing, you can put it back on here or something later, I guess.
So if there's a 2-year statute of limitation, and the accident happened June 30th, 2016, we have less than a year.
That's right.
So if they delay it, which they can, for years.
No, it's filed.
The statute of
Once you
limitations
file.
is when you file
Yeah.
the suit, not when it's resolved.
Gotcha.
So we would have to file a suit before June of 2018.
We have to find him first.
We have time to do that.
Okay. Good enough, everybody? Will y'all vote your conscience on this? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, same sign?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it failed, and you have your marching orders. Thank you, Mr. Gush. E6.
E6 is a resolution terminating a special legal counsel relationship, authorizing the city manager to execute a representation agreement with Denton, Navarro, Rocha, Bernal, and Zek, PC, and declaring an effective date.
I move to adopt.
Okay, okay. We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any questions? I've had this explained to me, so.
Yeah,
I'm
this is also an
comfortable with
unusual situation, and I'll briefly give a summary if I can.
That might help.
In 2009, when I was hired, the prior city attorney was an interim city attorney who was working here under contract. His name was George Hyde. And at the time that I was appointed, his firm and he were retained under a special legal counsel relationship to provide any additional support that I might have needed when I was first starting here as the city attorney. Subsequent to that, when we got involved in the Redburn litigation matter, I hired him to continue working on that case, to do the litigation on the case, and his firm has been working that case very well this entire time. In the last month, he's chosen to leave that firm. And that creates an interesting situation where we, the city, get to choose whether we want to continue with him carrying the case or leaving the case with the firm that he's leaving behind. It is my recommendation that we allow the firm itself to continue on with that case, largely because Mr. Hyde himself has not been handling the litigation of this matter for quite some time, for about 2 years. He has a very senior associate who's about a 20-year experienced litigator who's actually been handling this case. His name is Scott Shearhart, and he's very good. I would prefer to leave the case with Scott since he's been handling the case for the last 2 years, rather than allow it to stay with George Hyde simply because he's the name on the account. George would probably have to bring himself back up to speed on the case in order to continue the litigation, and of course, that would be on our time. So I would prefer to keep the case with the firm itself.
Okay. Everybody, make sense to everybody? Okay.
I agree.
Is he only there for the Rayburn case?
That is the only matter that we currently have with that firm. That's correct.
And he's been successful.
Absolutely. We've won in every court that we've been in, and
Why would
it's
we wanna
currently on
change?
appeal, but
Exactly.
The never-ending case.
that's right.
All right. Okay. No more questions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same? Okay. All right, so that's E6. Now, back to city manager reports. We do have the one planning commission. Want to knock that out real quick? April? you-
Mayor and council, the planning commission has 3 commissioners whose appointments expire in August 2017, Philip Johns, James Johnson, and Julia Welder. They were all appointed to fill vacancies on the commission, and each commissioner is eligible for reappointment, and they all desire reappointment. I did give you guys their original applications for each commissioner. We have since received a resignation letter from Bruce Woods because he moved outside of city limits, and that prevents him from being on that commission. So we have 2 additional applications that were presented to you to fill that vacancy, or we could also solicit others if you would so desire, but just bringing this to your attention, and we'll be back in a couple
Okay.
weeks.
And these 3, I'll take a minute to thank them for what they've done so far, and their term is not expired, correct? So
No,
they-
no.
And they have desire, they want to continue.
They would like to continue, which would put their positions through August of 2020, and then the vacant position would be just through August of 2019.
Okay, I would just suggest you bring it back with their 3 names in it, and if someone wants to change that on the agenda, we can at that time, if that's okay.
Then we also have that vacant position that Mr. Woods.
We do? Oh, okay,
Mhm.
okay. We'll
And
make that
There's 2
decision.
applications for
We've
that.
got
Okay.
those 2 applications, so if somebody wishes to recommend one of the names out of the 2, or if you would like us to go back out and get some more applications, we can do that. So,
Okay, I think the extra ones are fine, and if council, if y'all have someone in mind you want to encourage to go apply.
I'd like to recommend Gail Hode.
Okay,
I'd like to recommend Eric B. Leonard.
so we'll do a vote next time on those 2.
okay.
And if you have additional applicants, will we consider them too at that point?
Absolutely. Right now, this is the only 2 we
Okay,
have, so,
that's fine.
yes, be glad to.
Very good, so you'll bring it back and we'll make that decision. Okay, so under city manager reports, I kind of thought we finished, but we still can talk about the budget.
Well, yeah, yes, Gilbert did deliver the budget, so I think Gilbert,
He left. Oh, there he is.
he left, he moves on me. I just have a few points I want to make, and I'm not sure what you want to make, but we've talked about it enough to know, when you look, when you go through the budget, you read your transmittal letter, we did add those 2 police officers. You will notice, if you go back and compare to what Cheryl mentioned in June on what our employee numbers were going to be, we had a reduction of 2, which would have made the total number at 619. Adding those police officers back in, we're up to 621, which is a no increase in the number. But if you go back and look at what she presented, you'll say, it said 619, why are you at 621? It's because we've gone ahead and added those 2 police officers in there. Of course, the budget has the golf course added in there.
Yes, ma'am.
It's in there. So, and then one other thing, you may have heard some news about it, but with the Governor Abbott did a line item veto, I believe, and took out the TCEQ grant money for non-attainment and near non-attainment cities. That affects us. It's $175,000 a year. So you will notice the budget does remove that 175,000. That also is an employee that will no longer have a job with us because the grant money goes away at the end of December. But that's new in your budget. We did not talk about that during the budget work session.
Is that a city non-attainment or a county non-attainment?
It's a county non-attainment, but the city managed the grant.
Right.
So, and we will have some adjustments with that, and I know Daryl can get into a lot of details on it, but the monitoring that we were doing, and sometimes we would have, we would do tests for individuals that were thinking about, or companies that were thinking about moving into Victoria County to determine if it affected the air quality permits. So we're not gonna be able to continue doing that. We've got some money. If we need to do testing within the city limits, we'll be able to. But for those that are outside the city limits, we're going to look to the county and the port and some of those to pay for the cost of that.
Isn't the city inside the county?
It is.
Were those the reports that the school, the university was doing, those students?
I'm sorry.
Were those the reports that the university was, those,
San Marcos.
We
the
have
samples they were
University of
conducting?
Texas.
Right.
Have a relationship with them.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and we
Okay.
still do. So.
Oh, okay.
But Daryl can give a brief on, if you want to hear about the effects of that TCQ going away, so when you're looking at your budget, you'll know.
So, Charmel's right. The city manager's right.
Thank you.
I knew that was coming.
Say that a lot.
I think we're working on your evaluation.
Yeah, we are.
He gets a star.
So, the governor did veto the Rider 7 program for all near non-attainment cities. That's us, Austin, San Antonio, Corpus Christi, El Paso, and others. And so that $175,000 a year that we lost covered, as Charmel just spoke about, modeling. So if we have a large plant that was looking to move to Victoria County or within the city, we did this for Caterpillar when they were coming in, we would get notification. We would ask University of Texas to run a model, this plant size with the information that we get from that company, and they would tell us what that would do to our air quality going forward. Not necessarily just the ozone, but air quality in general. Now, plants are regulated by the EPA. We don't have a lot of control over that, but they do affect at some level what we're watching. So we had that modeling. We had an extensive advertising and education program. Those have been cut quite a bit. So we will still do some education. We will still do some advertising and stuff, but it will be more just during ozone season, just specific things. And then one of the big things that I really talked to the city manager about is we are still listed as a near non-attainment city. We're close enough to the 70 parts per million that we do need to keep an eye on it. So there is a little bit of money in there for University of Texas. Anytime we break that 70 parts per million mark, they're going to model that and tell us so that I can go to the state or whoever and say, it came here through transport. We did not create this. We still need that ability to explain if we break that mark. I have a fear that all these other near non-attainment cities, if everybody cuts back on their programs, the effect to us, which originally is transport, 90% of what we get is transport, is going to increase. And so we have to keep an eye on that. And I need that ability to explain to the state, to the EPA, that the only reason we're having this problem is because it's coming from other places. Other than that, like Charmel said, we are cutting one position. That position is funded through December 31st. After that, there will be one less position in the Environmental Services Department. And I'll answer any other questions.
It also require reduction in general fund side because also to subsidize the finance department. But we pick that cost up too.
So that's a change from June, just so you're aware of that, So Gilbert, do you have some comments, and then Cheryl, or?
Actually, I'll pass the baton to Cheryl, but
Okay.
I just want to make sure I give a note that in the budget does include that new fund, golf fund. There's a new tab in there. It has the highlight assumption, it has the rates and everything else. And I passed out earlier, which I was going to spend some time on it, but take it home, take a look at it. I just want to give you some highlights, what was presented originally, my revised projection, what I think the 18 is going to look like. But anyway, other than that, show has to the podium, and I'll get my stuff out of the way, and I'll disappear like always.
He's going to disappear. I need to follow you.
He's right here, Sherman.
Thank you. Don't let him go too far, Cheryl.
Well, I know my staff members are going to want me to speed this along. Is that right, on this side of the room? I've already gotten eyes from a few, so I will try to do my best to speed it along. I know it's been a long evening, so it's rare that I get to present one time, but 2 times in one evening is a rare treat. So I am here to talk about the health fund as it relates to our budget. And so I always want to start with sort of what our goal, our strategy, and our factors that we considered for the next plan year, which of course impacts the fiscal year 17-18 health fund. So our goal is to continue to manage the self-funded health plan in a way that balances the city contributions as well as the employee contributions, and then also limits the amount that we draw down from our reserve balance. And I'm going to talk a little bit more around the importance of that reserve balance when I get into some of the data and our proposal. Our strategy is to maintain a reserve balance for plan year or fiscal year 17-18 with 5 to 6 months. Last year at this time, we were talking about a reserve balance of 8 months. So I will talk to you again about some experiences that we've had over the year that we actually started to draw down even further our reserves. Maintain city's monthly premium contributions for employee-only plans. So a strategy of ours is to keep the city's contribution the same for the employee-only plans. Remember, employees pay for the dependent plan, so we don't contribute to the dependents. It's only the employee-only plans. And then we also looked at limiting the amount of the premium increase on the employee-only plans. So you're going to see an increase on the dependent side that is a greater percent increase than what we did with the employee-only plans. As we look at our health fund and our health plans, we want to make sure that we provide health alternatives or health options for our employees. And we understand that dependents come on that plan, but employees are sort of our first focus with regards to what we offer. Factors considered, 10 to 12% annual healthcare inflation trend. This again is an increase from what we presented this time last year, which was a 9% inflation trend. So it does tell us that our inflation and healthcare costs continues to increase, and it's something that we have to deal with, which is another reason why you'll see that reserve balance down from previous year. And then our medical claim experience and our self-funded plan. We had several high dollar claims that came in this year. Last year we had 7 that met a high dollar definition, and that high dollar definition claim is $25,000 or above, up to that $175,000 that is our deductible for stop loss. This year so far we are at 22 large claims. So that's the importance of having a reserve so that you have that to fall back on in years like this. We haven't seen a year like this in a long time, but having 22 large claims is pretty substantial for us. So as we look at what's projected for fiscal year 16-17 and fiscal year 17-18, you can see the trend continues to go up with regards to medical, and this does include dependent claims as well. So employee medical claim expenditures continue to rise. And no surprise there with regards to healthcare inflation as well as the claim cost. So I wanted to bring in, I sort of stole this strategy from Gilbert's charts with regards to explaining the health fund. So I wanted to pull in just sort of a pie charts to describe to you what our revenues, where our revenues come from with the health fund, and then where our expenditures are at. And so revenues, you can see where the city's contribution, and this is the city's contribution to the premium amount on the health plans, is 56%. Employees contribute then by paying that monthly premium, and their contribution to that revenues is about 30%. And that includes, of course, contributions that they make for the dependent plan as well. And then the retiree contributions make that about 5%, and then we have some miscellaneous refunds, 6%, and then that OPEB that funds then the OPEB trust on the expenditure side is about 3%. So our expenditures and the total revenues are about $6.2 million. The expenditures for fiscal year 16-17 are totaling about $7 million. So you can see where the claims cost, employee and dependent claims make up about 70% of our expenses. Retiree claims, and it's also those retirees that we fund that health reimbursement account on, about 14%. Administrative cost, that's our third-party administrator who handles our claims. Professional services is about 6%. Stop loss is making that 7%. And again, that OPEB trust is taken out to fund that trust of 3%. So we have a shortfall of about $800,000 this fiscal year. And again, that's contributed to not only the inflation that we're seeing with regards to health care, but also the 22 high dollar claim cost that we have experienced this year.
Were those 22 separate employees, or were they multiple events for perhaps one employee making up?
No, sir, those are 22 separate claims.
Sure, I didn't know that. 22 separate people or
different individuals.
15 people with one person having multiple claims? I'm
As
just
best
wondering
as
how it
I
broke
can
down.
tell with regards to that, it's separate entities. We have, out of 22, we had, and I've got the numbers here,
They're getting specifics. I was just wondering if.
but we have 15 that are employees, and the rest of that is dependents then on those high claims. Any further questions on? Okay, I'll move on. So, based on where we're at with regards to our current fund, we're proposing a premium increase for plan year 2018. We're proposing that increase for our active employees, and it's a 2% increase on the high deductible plan, and it's a 12% increase on the PPO plan. And I'll go through those rates here in a minute. We are also recommending retirees under 65 rate increase on the PPO plan and the high deductible. Those percentages are the same on the retiree side as we are experiencing on the employee side, or that we're proposing. So we also are proposing an increase to the individual and family deductibles in the high deductible plan. Primarily, this is driven by the federal mandates with regards to deductibles on the high deductible. The individual deductibles going from $2,600 to $2,700, and our family deductible we're proposing raise that from $5,000 to $5,400. We also are proposing an increase to our dental premiums. It has been several years since we had a dental premium increase, and as we look at our plan, our revenues in our dental are not covering our expenditures. So we're recommending an increase with regards to our dental plan for 2018 for active employees. We are not going to propose any design changes. If you remember last year about this time, we came in and rather than not raise premium increases, we decided to look at plan design changes to try to address that 9% inflation. What we didn't foresee, of course, was the 22 high claims that we received. And then we continue to look at ways to manage the administrative cost. We continue to challenge those professionals that are hitting that administrative to keep costs down. What can we do to keep costs down? And that includes not only our Cigna Medical Network, but also our third-party administrator, our stop loss. We shop that every year to try to keep those rates down as well. Now, to get into some of the particulars that we're proposing, this chart just shows our employee-only health fund, employee-only plan. And so it gives you an idea of where we're at currently for 2017 for both the PPO traditional plan and the high deductible. Our total monthly premium that we've established for those plans, PPO is $559. The city's monthly contribution stays at $427. And the employee now is paying $132 for that employee-only PPO plan. And then you see the cost share component there. And that cost share is based off of that total monthly premium. Okay. So the high deductible, you can follow where we're at currently in employee-only plan. They pay under $100, $97.97 for coverage with the high deductible plan. And that is the plan where several years ago we established the 80-20 cost share on, and so we've maintained that. So going forward with regards to plan year 2018, we're raising that 132 rate for employees to 147.84. That changed that cost share from 76.24 to 75.25. The high deductible, we're changing from $97.97 to the $99.54 per month. And that maintains that 80-20 cost share in the employee-only plan for high deductible. For dental rates, the total monthly premium is $30.23. The city monthly contribution is $12.09. Currently, employees will pay the $18.14, and you see the cost share split there. Proposed plan for 2018 is raising the $18.14 for the employee-only plan up to $22.67 a month. This is what our employees will see in their pay stubs biweekly. This chart also provides you with the number of members in each plan. So if we look at the PPO plan, you can see we have 229 members in the employee only, and their rate biweekly will go up $7.31 with this change. Follow that line across, and you can see then the high deductible plan. We have 101 members enrolled in the high deductible plan, and their rate is going to be less than $1. Where I mentioned some of the increases coming into play were the dependents, so you can see the biweekly amounts with regards to our PPO dependent coverage, as well as the high deductible. There's one thing I want to point out in this chart in particular, is that depending on what employees select, they might indeed see a decrease in what they pay per month for coverage. If they decide, let's say an employee-only plan, I am in the PPO today, so I'm paying biweekly $60.92 for my plan, and I decide I want to move to the high deductible plan, I will see a decrease in what I'm paying per month by making that selection choice. My $60.92 goes to $45.94. Okay. Any questions on that? For the employee dental, same type of chart. You see the employee members. Employee only is 268. We've got 837 is the rate, 1046. The biweekly increase is going to be $2 for employee only. And then the family. So a little bit more around the design of our PPO health plan or our medical plans in general. As a reminder, employees pay the full cost for dependent coverage. It is voluntary enrollment, and we have medical coverage that begins day one of employment, which helps with our recruitment of new employees. The copay amounts were established at $40. We're not recommending any changes to these designs, so the copay amounts will stay $40 for an in-network primary care physician, $60 for an in-network specialist. The annual deductible stays the same at $1,500. Family deductible $39.50, and the in-network coinsurance, and this is the percent of insurance that after you meet the deductible, what is paid, and that is not a change either at 80%. The out-of-network, if you remember last year, we decided because of our robust network that we were going to put a no benefit component in. So if employees chose to go out of network and not use an in-network in-network physician or clinic or whatever the case might be, there was not going to be any coverage associated with that decision. So there is no benefit for out-of-network coinsurance. Again, we have not had anyone come to us with sticker shock on that, so we've really, I think, done a good job of educating our folks about that component and using those providers that are in network. And then the hospital deductible, we raised this to $500 last year, no change this year. For the high deductible plan, same aspect with regards to our dependent coverage. It's voluntary enrollment. Medical coverage also begins day one. The high deductible health plan employees that select this plan are eligible to contribute to a health savings account, which helps them then pay for first dollar coverage until that deductible is met. So I mentioned a while ago the delta between if I'm in the PPO plan and then I decide to go to the high deductible plan, then maybe as an employee I want to take that delta and put it toward my HSA account. So I start saving up some money to cover those first dollar expenses that might come up. So there's some pen to paper that an employee is going to need to be doing with regards to what's the best selection for them and their family. Remember, this plan does not have copays, so it's that first dollar coverage in regards to paying until you meet that deductible. And the deductible for the individual is going up $100, that $2,600 to $2,700, which again is that federally mandated component. Annual family deductible, we're raising from $5,000 to $5,400. That's a $400 change. But once you meet that deductible, the plan is now coming in and paying 100%. And that's not a change from where we've been when we introduced the high deductible plan. On prescription health plan, our generic copays and preferred brand copays and all the design around our prescription plan stays the same. Again, remember on the high deductible, you pay first dollar for even prescriptions as if you would pay first dollar to go to a provider. And once that deductible is satisfied, then the plan will pay the 100%. On the dental plan, we have a premium dental plan that includes orthodontic services. The city pays 80% of basic services, 50% for major services. We pay for 2 visits per calendar year, 100% on preventive, and the annual deductible is $50 for employee and $150 for family. And that's what we currently have today, so no changes we're proposing for plan year 2018. So as I provide to you sort of a side-by-side comparison on the medical plans for employees, you'll see the PPO there and the biweekly premium for employee-only plans is $68.23. For high deductible, it's $45.94. You have the copay components in there and the deductibles, in-network annual deductible difference, as well as the coverage after that deductible is met. Now I want to bring your attention back to the health fund and what we're projecting for 17-18 versus what I showed you before was 16-17. So with our proposed changes, with some of our revenue increases that we have, we're still showing a shortfall between our revenues and our expenditures, but we're closing that gap. Rather than the $800,000, we're at $300,000 roughly. You can still see where those contributions come into play with regards to the revenue as well as the expenses on the expenditure side. And it's not our strategy, of course, is to continue to take down the reserves. You know, we want to build that back up. However, we've got to balance the premium increases and what we want to see happen on the employee side. So it's a constant kind of balance game with regards to what we feel like our employees can handle with regards to premium increases as well as managing our plan the way we need to. Also, one of the things that we often get questions on is, or statements, is that once we have a pay program, then we have an increase in premiums. And so I thought this chart might be helpful for you just to show you what our history of plan changes compared to the pay program. So I went back to 2015. 2015, we did not propose any kind of changes, premium increases for medical or dental plans, but we did provide the pay program that you approved, the 3% pay for performance and the 3% step pay for non-supervisor certified police and fire positions. In 2016, we did come in and we provided an increase to our PPO plan, but we did not provide an increase to the high deductible plan. The high deductible plan stayed flat that 2016 year. We did not have dental premium increases and we had no plan design changes in 2016. And we turned around and provided, again, a pay program that you approved. The average pay program was across the board 3%, a 3% step, and then we also came on top of that and provided on average a 2.5% market adjustment for certain positions in fire and PD. In 2017, we looked at increases. We decided to move toward design changes instead. So there was no premium increases, but there were those design changes. We changed copays, we changed deductibles. We also offered new voluntary benefits. So we had critical care benefit, accident insurance that was offered, legal shield and identity theft insurance that was provided. Of course, that's all voluntary, so if the employee wants it, they pay for it. And we also introduced that no out-of-network coverage. We did not have a pay program in 2017. So for 2018, we're proposing the premium increases because of the experience in our self-funded plan and what we've experienced this year. The PPO employee-only increase is going up $1,584 a month. The high deductible is $157 a month. And we are including in that proposal plan design changes that match up the deductibles with the federal mandates. As you know, our pay program proposal for this year is the 1,000 stipend pay program for all employees, except for those non-supervisor certified PD fire positions that would receive the STEP plan. And I think I've talked fast enough. I'm at the questions chart, so if you have any questions, I'd be glad to address those.
So the budget we received tonight, this is all built into it.
That's correct.
And at what point did you communicate to all the employees? When does that happen?
Tonight.
This is
Yeah.
the first time? Okay, I just want to make sure, so they'll hear
We
about
did
it.
share with the department
Okay.
heads sort of the direction that we were going. But yes, sir, communications will start as early as tomorrow with regards to sort of what the proposals are.
Okay.
And then we have a leadership forum that invites all the leaders within the organization to come in and learn different things. And we've got it scheduled for September to go into more detail around these changes.
Well, your presentations are, I commend you, they're always really good. I like this. And
Thank you.
I think the 10 to 12% annual healthcare inflation trend is just, it's just so disappointing. I mean, there's no way, we have to keep this plan solvent and functional so that they have health insurance. If we don't act responsibly, there will be no insurance at all. So I hope everyone understands that. And I particularly do appreciate this slide here. That's great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Point, and I will tell you that we're still getting a good deal here in the city compared to what's available out there in the private marketplace or even dealing with Obamacare. I've looked at the deductibles here, and then the employee, whether it's high deductible or whether the PPO plan, and it's still a good value compared to what's out there on the open market.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Is there do we have anything else? We
Gilbert,
covered all?
Gilbert, you have any, you're done? Okay, so we're done.
Because we're going on
We
2.5
have an executive session. Yes, we do
hours,
have an
yeah.
executive session, but as far
Yes.
as budget, I'm finished.
Okay, so that concludes our agenda, and we'll move to executive session upstairs, across the way. Thank you.
The city council will recess now into executive session on the first day of August 2017. Under Texas Government Code Section 551.072 to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property interests due to the fact that a deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the city in negotiations with a third party. Thank you.